only 15 people came. I think of that as a failure. So much
Mhm.
money can be made in a room of 15 people. And so I think it's just like overcoming that fear and knowing like, hey, I know that this is going to change somebody's life, and really focusing on doing it for the one.
You're tuned in to the Event Gems podcast, the podcast where coaches, consultants, and speakers learn how to produce transformational and profitable events. I'm your host, Natasha Wright, Chief Experience Curator at the Diamond Butterfly. Join me and other industry experts as we teach you how to maximize the power of your next brand building event. Time to drop those gems. Let's fly. Hey, Trailblazers, welcome to another episode of Events Gems, where we uncover the hidden gems to hosting impactful and profitable events. I'm your host, Natasha Wright, Chief Experience Curator at the Diamond Butterfly Agency, an event management agency that produces events for businesses and organizations. And today I am joined by my guest, Natisha Livingston, also coined the Connection Queen by her peers. She is known for connecting women of all walks of life in business and creating spaces where they can be their most authentic selves. Natisha is a visionary founder of Illuminate Her and Experiences for Her, leveraging her unparalleled sales expertise to redefine the dynamics of virtual and in-person events. She believes conversion is fostered through connection and community, and she is passionate about supporting visionaries in increasing their ROI. So, without further ado, let's welcome Natisha. Hey, Natisha.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Welcome. So excited for us to dive into this conversation today.
Super, super excited. Thank you, Natasha. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you guys are new to hosting events or you've never heard the term conversion or enrollment events before, then this is a great place for you to start because what we're going to be talking about today is the back end sales, and back end sales can really maximize or supercharge the profitability of your event. And so I think it's important for you to think about different revenue streams that you can utilize to make more money from your events. And, my own personal philosophy is that as a business owner, you should use your events as either a marketing tool or a brand building tool. A lot of times, entrepreneurs think about how they can monetize their events or be profitable from their events. And they're thinking about it from the perspective of ticket sales or sponsorships or possibly tangible product sales, but they're not thinking about the back end sales, which I think is a huge part of what can really expand the profitability of your event. So I'm excited for us to have this conversation. And if you haven't heard of enrollment events, sales or conversion events, I do have some previous episodes that you can listen to. There is one by Dr. Shauna Scott where she talks about more in depthly what these types of events are, and another episode by Linda Kane where she talks about how you can format these types of events. But today we're going to dive into the back end part of it about how you can fully maximize the revenue stream of these types of events. So before we jump into the conversation, Natisha, give us an overview of who you are, your business journey, and how it is that you came to start Illuminate Her and Experiences for Her.
Yes, for sure. Thank you so much. So my name is Natisha Livingston, and I actually got my first introduction to events in network marketing. I was in network marketing for about 4 or 5 years. And I just remember vividly them always telling us, they had these conferences and they were always telling us, get people in the room, get people in the room. And they had this philosophy that if you got somebody in the room, they would be locked in, right? They would be locked in from what they saw, the energy, the people, the environment. If they went to an event, they were getting signed up. And I saw firsthand exactly how that was true. And so when I got out of that industry and launched my own business and started offering my own personal services, I kept that in the back of my mind. I really built my businesses off events. And so I had about 3 events myself. And at each of those events, I showcased an offer. I had an offer in the back of the room. And my coach, thank God, shout out to Jalen Jones, she would help me sell this offer. And so I would pitch on stage. and she would actually help the people who were attending actually move forward in the offer. And it wasn't until my event last year that I had in 2023, had an offer, she sold it. And when it was over, I was like, there is such a gap here. Like, if I didn't have Jalen, who would be selling my offer for me? Because it's like,
Yes, but
I don't know, like, who
mhm.
are you going to trust to
You
sell
don't
your
know what you don't know. Yeah.
exactly. And so I just saw this gap and I was like, you know what? As an event producer, as an event host, you're thinking about so much. You're planning the event, you're the talent, so much is going in your head that typically the offer or, back event sales is usually the last thing that's on your mind. And I was like, there is a need and an opportunity to assist and support those who are actually producing events so they can capitalize on those back of room sales.
Yeah, absolutely. As you were talking, I think sometimes you don't know what you don't know. And I think a lot of times as business owners, we know that events are important, but strategically, we don't know how important events can be for our business, right? So it's amazing that you had a coach like that who could guide you through that process. And so I think that that's an important point, is that you can also guide people through the process of what that would take, what that looks like, and how important it is for your business and events. Because, like you said, we don't have time to be thinking about everything. An event is a logistical heavy lift, right? And I'm an event manager. And so, that's what you're talking about is what I help my clients with. It's important that you have someone who could take some things off of your plate so you could show up fully, for your event, and really speak from a place not of stress or anxiety, but from a place of peace and ease so that you can allow the attendees to get the transformation that they came for. And so I love that you shared that backstory. One of the other things, too, when I was researching you a bit, I found an article that you were featured in. And in that article, you were talking about, spending habits and entrepreneurship and our relationship with money. And in the article, you said many of our spending habits and relationships with money are directly tied to the trauma that we have experienced. With that, I was able to create the 5 pillars of a healed and whole woman. And I'm guessing this is something that you had created in the past. She must first
Mhm.
be healed from her trauma, increase her confidence, and shift her mindset. This right here is the work that many people skip over. Once this internal work has been done, that's when we can focus on entrepreneurship and investing. And I was like, wow, I love that, because I truly do believe that entrepreneurship is like not is like, it is a personal development journey. It's going to show you the blocks, the barriers, the things that you need to work on. How important is it to bridge this gap between our internal work and what is possible on the other side, or what we think is possible? When do you know when is the right time for you to even do an enrollment or conversion event? When is the right time to do something like this?
So, when you're really passionate about something, when the article that you're reciting was one of the first blueprints of an event that I hosted, and I'm so passionate about us healing from the inside out. Because I was in network marketing and in that space, I helped people with investing. And what I saw was there was so much trauma that we had that it really just made it impossible for people to go through the process and learn how to invest. And I didn't have a super large following or a large audience, but I know that I had this framework and this blueprint that made sense. I knew it would make a difference. And so when I held my first event based on that blueprint, I didn't have an audience. I just knew that the type of woman that I wanted in the room, they didn't have names, they didn't have faces. I didn't know who was going to show up. But I made content that was attracting to her. When I went live, I made sure that I was speaking to who was supposed to be in the room. And that's why I think intimate spaces are so powerful. I didn't know who was going to, be in the room, but I was calling in who was supposed to be in the room. And at that first event, 30 people showed up in that space and we kind of went over that framework. And so I would just say that if you're one passionate about something, if you have like a system or framework that you believe will make a difference, start calling in those people. I think a lot of times people stray away from hosting events because they are scared of not getting butts in seats. And no matter if you're making a little bit of money or a lot of money, the number one question that an event producer is asking themselves is, how am I going to fill this room? A lot of times people will look at, oh, I only 10 people came, only 15 people came. I think of that as a failure. So much
Mhm.
money can be made in a room of 15 people. And so I think it's just like overcoming that fear and knowing like, hey, I know that this is going to change somebody's life, and really focusing on doing it for the one. Doing it for the one is,
Mm.
if I can transform one person, if I can change one person's life, it's worth me having this event, holding space for
Oh,
somebody.
that's so good. That is so good. Do it for the one. Do it for the
The one.
one. I used to run a restaurant back in the day, and one of the marks for me of like a really good DJ was that if there wasn't a lot of people in the room, he would play like there was 1,000 people in the room. It's not, you're passionate about what you're doing, and you're so committed to excellence and committed to people having a good time when I'm talking about the DJ, right? That even if it's 5 people in the room, he's going to play like there's 1,000, and those 5 people are going to have the most amazing time. So when you talk about doing it for the one, it doesn't matter if it's one person, 5 people. It's you building your business or building your event, and taking that step by step, because you got to take these steps. And I know that we are in a society that is so used to microwavable results that we don't want to go through the process or the journey, but that's really what builds the character and your resilience, and allow you to serve at a higher level and a higher capacity. And so since we're here talking about marketing, in your sales experience, what type of marketing strategies do people need to, because you were talking about, you spoke to that one person, you were calling in that ideal client, right? You weren't even sure who that ideal person was, but you knew that if you were speaking the language of that person, that that's the person that your messaging was going to attract. And we're Facebook friends, and I see how you market, I believe, your new company Experiences for Her, and you are gifted at marketing and having conversations. So I would just love for you to go a little bit deeper on your marketing strategies and how that's important when bringing people into your event, and how that helps with conversion.
Yeah, for sure. And thank you for that. Sometimes when you be producing content, you just hope it sticks somewhere. So I appreciate
Girl,
that.
I was like, she's so good. I was
I
like,
really
I need to
appreciate
learn some
that.
stuff from her. It
I
is
really appreciate that
like, I
for
love
real.
how you tell stories.
Yeah.
It's beautiful, and it really allows you to see what's possible on the other side of your business. And so that's what I really love, and I think that's an art. That's definitely an art. So I'll let you go ahead
Yeah,
now.
for sure, for sure. When it comes to marketing, the first thing first is you have to know who you're talking to, even if you don't know exactly who you're talking to. You have to have, in any type of business, I feel like, where when we talk about like my ideal client or dream client, this is the one piece that people negate. They don't take time to figure out exactly who they're speaking to. And so when it comes to your event, on top of knowing like what your ultimate goal for hosting the event is, you have to know what is the goal of the event, like for your attendees. Like, what transformation do you want them to leave with? And so when you understand that, what transformation you want them to go through, you're almost like reverse engineering it. So if this is the transformation, okay, well, what problems is somebody coming into this room with? What feelings do
Mhm.
they, what are they going through right now? And so when you're able to reverse engineer, starting from the transformation and then working your way back, now you're able to craft messages and get inside the heads of the people that are supposed to be in the room. So you have to know what problems that you solve. What
Mhm.
problems does your client have? And then you're creating your event around that. So that way you're taking somebody through a process, or you're taking them through a journey. So by the time that you're done, you're setting yourself up for success, where they have no choice but to want to do business with you. And that's how you increase the conversion, because you're literally creating an event that's needed around the problem that they have. So everything is based on knowing exactly who you have in the room. And again, even if these people are faceless and nameless, you know the problem, you've done your research. And a lot of times, what's so great about that is we're typically our first client. So some
Oh
of the
yeah.
things, the services that we may provide, we know what these people are going through. We know how they feel because we have been in their shoes. I know exactly how
Mhm.
stressful it is to host an event. I know how, it is to not have a lot of help. So when I'm speaking to my person, I'm able to take into my experiences that I had dealing with the same problem. And now it's like, hey, this is how I filled that gap. Let me support you. And that's with anything.
What is your event promise, right? So I know that if
Yeah.
I come to your event and you're saying I'm going to plan my content in 90 days, that when I actually come to your event, when I spend my money and I come to your event, I'm going to plan out my content for 90 days and learn how to implement it, or and have, additional support, whatever that's going to be, right? Whatever the event promises, just make sure that you have integrity with what it is that you
Yes.
promise and what it is that actually happens in the room. Because based on what you're saying, it's that if that promise is met, then I feel like I could trust you as someone to guide me at a higher level, or at a deeper level. And so that will allow me to really want to work with you further, right? So you are deemed the connection queen, right? So let's talk about connection, because right now we're talking about building trust. Your event promise has to manifest itself inside of the experience that you provide for people, right? And that's a way
Mhm.
for you to build trust. But beyond that, you talk about how connection is also important for conversion. So can you go a little bit deeper into that? What does that mean? And how can event producers or event hosts think about building upon that connection?
Yeah, for sure. So I believe in three pillars: connection, community, and conversion. And you have to
Mm,
have that connection and community piece if you want to convert anything. And so you have to create a space that is able to foster connection. And I think sometimes as event producers, we stress ourselves out thinking that we have to do everything, but really all we're doing is creating a space where people can connect, because we're living in a time where people just want to be around like-minded people. They want to belong somewhere. People are like longing for relationship. They're longing for like these genuine connections and relationships. And so if you're able to just kind of lead and create and foster this space, people are going to do what it do. Like they are going to build relationships. They're going to build connections. Like all the events that I have ever held, whether it's small community events in my city or larger ones, all I do is I create spaces. I'll create a Facebook group. I will create like a private community where people can go in and introduce themselves and connect with people. And I still see to this day people who have become friends from, being introduced in my spaces. They become business partners. And it's like, there's not much that you have to do as an event host, but really create that space, that safe space where people feel like they can show up, be themselves, and meet other people who are doing the same as well. Because just when I kind of reflect and think back, I'm like, there's not much that I've done. I'm really just creating the space where people are able to do that. So that private
mm.
community where people feel comfortable with, shedding a little light on who they really are. That's powerful. And when you're really able to get to know somebody on a deeper level, that's what fosters that connection. That's what bridges community. And when people are emotionally tied to spaces and they trust and know that you can kind of help get them to the next level, that's when the conversion piece comes in.
And that's why people attend events. It's you go because you want to connect with people. Yes, you want to learn information, but from my perspective, there's only so much I can learn at an event, right?
Right.
So when I go into an event, I go in with this is what I'm working on right now. And when I catch that gem or I catch that information, that's the information that I need. I don't
Yep.
need to, and not to say that I'm not going to stay for the full 3 days, or but I also want to be intentional about, well, what is it that I'm actually going to be executing on? But beyond that, it's the connections that you make. It's who can be your accountability partner, who can be your partner in something, who could be your business partner. That's how you really extend the life cycle of the event, is bringing,
Exactly.
like you said, these like-minded people in the room for them to be able to connect and build off of that energy and that relationship. And so I feel like what you're saying is you're going to remember where you connected with these people, how the
Yes.
space made you feel, the experience that you had, right? How the organizer or the producer facilitated that happening, and you're going to crave that same or similar experience again. So, can you talk a little bit more about experiences? Why is it important for us to be intentional about the experience? And what are some tangible things that people could do to build connection? So, you talked about having a Facebook group. Are there other things
Mhm.
that the producers can do to build upon that connection?
Yeah, I think I love the Facebook group. So, in terms of having any event, whether you're doing it in person, virtually, having that sacred, safe space where people are able to build relationships with one another is key. So, having a Facebook group. One thing that I always do, no matter if it's a virtual event or a in-person event, I am always having a virtual launch party, always having a virtual launch party no matter what the event is. Why?
Oh,
Because
I love that. I love that.
what I'm doing, because again, it gets people hyped up. We're able to hang
Mm,
out with each other for this time. I have framework where I'm giving them more information about the event that they're going to attend. There's music, like like we do little activities, and so people are able to really meet each other before they meet each other. And so,
mhm,
it's just like these little things, but they really lead to big things. So that's just pre-event. Depending on how long you're marketing an experience, I did like a 5-day virtual summit. It was the Black Women Need to Normalize experience. And I marketed it was a virtual event, and I marketed for almost 4 months. And so when you're marketing like an online event for that long, you have to find ways to keep people engaged so they're excited about that event that's 4 months away. And so I had so many marketing activities that I did. This was during a time where Clubhouse was on and popping. So we did Clubhouse mini
oh God.
series before the event. We did Facebook Live segments with the speakers. Like there was just so many things. I did like a month of self-care. So there was just so many activities and so many things where it was just in people's face, where they were
Mhm,
like, oh, that's attached to, the Black women to normalize. We're doing this month. And so keeping people engaged for that period of time and keeping them excited for the actual event. So those are a couple of things that can be done like pre-event. Then when you actually have the event, just making sure that you have time within your event allotted for networking, maybe some
mhm,
icebreakers, moments to where people are able to have vulnerability. I always get tongue tied on
mhm.
that word. Um,
We
like I'll
got you, girl. We
typically
got you.
I'll typically do like a journal prompt, right? Like I'll do a journal prompt segment, ask them a question. Maybe it's like them talking to their future self or them talking to their past self. And then when you have give people the opportunity to share, that unleashes just a flood of emotions. Now women are connecting with others in the room. You're giving people the opportunity to share their story, to share a light of who they are. And when you give people the opportunity to do this, that's how those emotional ties are tied to your event. That's how people are able to relate to one another and connect with one another. Now conversations are happening, at breaks because of something that somebody said. And so just being able to master the facilitation piece, I think is very, very crucial.
Oh, like we are of one accord. Let the church say amen. I think that sometimes people think that when you think about connection or being intentional about the experience, you have to spend more money, right? Or you
Oh,
got to add more things to it. And it's
yeah.
not that. It's the simple, small things that actually add up to people having a more connected and amazing experience, right? So I
Absolutely.
love that you share some of those things. And one of the things that I've also seen pop up, I love the idea of the launch party. Well, first of all, for the event that you were promoting, was that a free event or was that a paid event, the virtual event?
The virtual experience was completely free. Completely free.
Okay. Okay. So I
Yes.
love
Yeah.
that you marketed that event as if it were a paid event
Oh,
because I
all
think
time.
sometimes when people think about virtual events, they're like, oh, I could just slap it on there, a week before, 2 weeks before. Like, nah, you got to actually go through a marketing plan or have a strategy for how you're going to market it in the same way that you would an in person event or in the same way that you would a paid event, right?
And that
So,
adds
so
to the experience.
Yeah, it absolutely does. And so I think that it also shows that you care, right? For you to do those added things beforehand to keep people engaged because also the fact that it's free means that some people that signed up 3 months ago, they probably don't have the event top of mind, right? So by doing
Right.
these things, you're ensuring that they stay engaged, that they stay excited about the event, and they come excited to the event to hear whatever it is that the speakers are going to talk about, you're going to talk about, or what you have to offer. And so I love that that's one of your ways that you're building connection and community around your event. So I think that that's such an important point is don't treat a virtual event. I hope you heard it here. Don't treat your virtual event like a throwaway. Don't treat it like just something you just pop up. You be intentional about the event, even though it's a free event. So I just wanted to do a deeper dive and stick a pin in that one because I've just seen it done so many times where it's like, oh, you see the marketing on Monday and the events on Friday. You're like, what?
Girl.
Come
Oh,
on. And they're like, "Oh, nobody showed up." Wonder why? You know,
exactly. God,
it
Natasha.
is
Yeah,
what it is.
girl, literally.
Yeah, yeah. I've seen it done so many times, and so that's one of the things that we're not taking in 2024 with us, okay?
We
We're
are
not
not
taking that in 2024 with us. Yeah.
gotta operate in excellence.
Yeah, absolutely, operate in excellence. And so I was thinking about an event my first personal development event, first conference, matter of fact, that I went to. It was a Lisa Nichols event, and I remember being at that event. I don't know how many people were in that room. It was probably may have been 500, 600 people, and I remember that was the first time that I was even introduced to sales and at that time and probably for years later, I didn't even know that it was a sales or a conversion event. I just thought I was going to an event, right? But I remember I think it was on day 2 and she was talking about her offer and the offer was one of the offers was $50,000. And when they asked who wants to sign up and all these women raised their hands and I'm like, who are these women who are spending $50,000,
Wow.
$100,000 and it was
Yeah.
black women and my mind was just so expanded. I didn't know anybody who would invest at that level. I got to that conference, I had to scrape it together to pay for the plane
Yeah.
fare and to pay for the hotel,
Yeah.
but that really expanded my mindset as to what's possible and really is what kind of got me in a place where I'm like I want to be in the transformational space. So we
Yeah.
know that Lisa Nichols is one of the giants in the transformational space and her event is huge. It's something that she does every year. People expect it, right? But what about someone who is just starting out? This might be their first event or this is the first time they're thinking about doing an enrollment event. You mentioned before that you don't have to have 100 people in the room for you to make money. So from your experience, can you talk about your experience with working with clients with fewer than 100 people? What are your strategies to ensure that that conversion happens even though it's a small amount of people in the room? Or what might be considered, quote unquote, a small amount of people in the room?
Yeah, for sure. I always say this: if what you don't have in money, you have to make up in time or in other ways. So when you have like an intimate group under 100, I would say even under 50, honestly, personalization is key. Paying attention to the attendee experience is key. Taking almost like it's almost like you're courting your attendee. You're taking them through this process, through this journey. You're almost like dating them. And so you have to show up for them. You have to care. You have to show that you have to show them that you care about them. And so each touch point, essentially, from the moment that they see your content to, how easy is it for them to purchase a ticket? Are they immediately getting communication after they have given you money? How many touch points in between are you doing? Are you keeping them engaged throughout the process? At the actual event, what energy is being emitted in the room? How can you keep people like happy? So I just had an event this past year. It was the big business brunch and had a venue fell through literally last minute. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to rent out a mansion. The name of the brunch was the big business brunch. So I'm like, all right, let's go big. However, with that,
Mm,
I'm like, okay, I just paid for this huge space. I don't have that much money now for decor or signage. And a lot of times we get caught up with thinking that we need all these things. And so my coach told me, she said, look, we just paid, 3 grand for this house. The house is the decor. And so we stayed up
yes.
all night making sure that like the house just looked great. We had red roses going down the stairway. The house was looked magnificent. And so we were thinking like when somebody comes up to this space, they ain't gonna care about no signage. Like people are gonna be worried about getting content. They're gonna be wanting to take pictures. They're gonna want to look around because that's what the space was. And so I didn't spend no money on decor because all I did was buy the venue. We did some red roses. We had flowers. Obviously, we had brunch there, and so presentation was key. But we didn't spend extra money on signage or balloons and things because the venue emitted enough energy that we needed in the room, and it did what it had to be. It did what it did. People came in there and they were just flabbergasted about how nice everything looked. Everybody wanted to take photos. Like it was just such a positive energy and nothing extra had to be purchased. It was just the venue. So think about how
Mhm.
easy cleanup was. Like it was low energy for me. It was just completely low energy, high vibrational though. And so other things that I did was I hand wrote 55 notes the night before.
Wow.
Definitely recommend starting way early. But I handwritten these notes, personalized them, and that was when everybody came in. They had received a personalized note, and then my offer was inside of the envelope. And
Mhm.
so everybody was, opening. I had a moment where I was like, "All right, guys, open your letters." And so everybody was reading like their personal letter, and it was just like an added touch. And so
Mm,
what you don't have in money, you do have to make up in time. Writing
mm,
those notes is very time consuming. But because I didn't have the additional funds for additional decor, I had to make it work with what I had. And I had spent so
mhm.
much money on this house. So I had to make it up in other ways. And personalization is definitely one of those major touch points.
That is beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Like, it just definitely shows that you care because you could have just been like, "Listen, y'all come to this room and we're gonna do this thing, and then I'm gonna give you my offer," right? And so one of the things that I saw on your website, you were talking about how you I believe I want to make sure I read it in the way that it was written, is that you guide attendees to an empowered decision to work with the client, right? Or to work with you. And you say that that's crucial, right? So I feel like with the story that you just shared, it's an empowered decision.
Mhm.
It's not salesy, because I think that that's one of the things, right? When you talk about back of the room sales, it feels like
Yeah.
it's salesy. So how do
Mhm.
you guide people or guide attendees to an empowered decision without it being salesy?
Honestly, everything that we've just talked about, literally
Mhm.
creating an experience for them, because it's like pre-event to the actual event, like all of the activities that you're having, the transformation that's being taken place at the event. Once you get to that moment, people know whether they're going to move forward with you or not, like during that space. And so all you can do is court them and give them a piece into what it's like to work with you. And if you've done your job correctly, if there's been emotional connections made, if you've made space for the women or your attendees to build relationships with one another, if there is just that, the emotional piece, I definitely want to harp on, because when somebody is emotionally engaged and tied to your experience, that's when transformation is happening. When you're getting somebody, when you went to Lisa Nichols' event, your mind was expanded. And if you get somebody
Oh, absolutely.
to look at their higher self while being in their space, they're going to want to move forward with you. It's going to be a no-brainer. That's why it's very
Mhm.
important to know exactly who's in the room and what problems that they have. That's why one piece that's very crucial to the sales process is sending out an attendee intake form, knowing and
Mm.
finding out who's in the room, what problems are they currently having. Because if you're able to gather those attendee intake forms, you're now able to read them and see what problems people are having, and you're literally able to create your event around their actual problems. I have had events where I'm creating the actual experience on site, like just based on who's in the room and what they need. So many times we want to show up and just speak on all the things that we know. Is that what the people need? And so, really creating your experience around the needs of the individuals who are in the space, and then taking it a step further, create an offer that is solving the problem of the people that are in the space. Because if you're off solve their problem and you just put on and wowed them for the last 90 days, and now we're at the grand finale, which is the event, it's literally a no-brainer that they're going to move forward. And as the salesperson, that puts me in more of a consultative situation, and not more so in a salesy situation where now I feel like I'm chasing after you. You want this just as just as much as I want this for you. And now the only barrier is typically price. So how can we
Mhm.
help you afford this in this moment so you can move forward and get the transformation that you desire?
I love that. So you have an intake form, you assess the information that people need. What are the challenges that they need? What is it that they're looking for? So you already have that information beforehand, before they step into
Correct.
the room. Then they
Correct.
step into the room and you're facilitating the back end sales. What are some things that, for someone as the event host, how do you guide them through that process to ensure that people come to the back of the room, or what is your sales process when it comes to that, right? I'd
Yeah.
love to, for someone who is listening, to kind of get the experience of what it would be like working with you and how that could support their event.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's very, very simple. When somebody pitches an offer, so typically how so many of us are operating is we'll have an offer, and we will usually either have a friend, a sister, maybe a past client that will help us with our sales process. I was lucky enough to actually have my coach. So I had somebody who was masterful at sales. Not everybody is blessed with that. So most of the time we got to take what we have, which is typically volunteers. So typically a lot of people will have, volunteers in this space. The issue with that is that we don't know the expertise of this person's sales, that this person has at sales. And so many opportunities are missed. Now, when you hire out having a sales team, how it looks like is you're literally doing your thing, you're being the host, you're facilitating, and then whether it's on day 1, day 2, you pitch your offer. And what that looks like is you have already introduced the sales team like day 1. So I immerse myself in your process throughout the whole experience. So when we're doing attendee intake forms, you're letting your audience know, hey, my sales team, they may be reaching out to you with questions. I may do 15 minutes conversations with people before the event even starts. So now we're able to identify, hey, who could possibly be a buying unit? Who may be interested in moving forward? Who should we give a little bit more love and care to at the event? And then when we're actually at the event, you pitch, you make your offer, and you're like, hey, if you're interested in moving forward, go see, Natisha. And then at that time, we have those who are interested come to the table or our space. And we're literally at that time just answering any questions and helping people stand in their decision. Because you definitely don't want anybody to get started out of fear or negative emotions. You really want them to feel empowered in the decision that they're making. So what we're doing is we're holding space for them. We're answering their questions. We are making sure that they're understanding what they're getting. We're taking them, we know the offer in and out, so that way we can answer those questions. And then obviously the biggest factor is payment. And the reason why this is so crucial is because it's hard to separate yourself as the event person or the host where everybody's shaking hands, kissing babies. It's hard to then put yourself into the salesman position, especially the connotations that come when it comes to sales. So it's a lot easier for you if you can just completely remove yourself from the sales situation.
Mhm.
And that way it's more so like, hey, whoever gets started gets started. There's no hard feelings. You're not feeling bad. The attendee doesn't have to feel awkward. It's like a third party is just coming in and kind of being that barrier. And it's kind of just black or white. There is no emotion mixed in between.
I love that you're integrated within the client's team. You become an extension of their team. And I think that that's
Yeah.
an important part because it's not like you're just a contractor coming in, showing up the day of the event, being like, all right, I'm here, I'm your sales team, right? You've had an intimate relationship not only with the client, but you also have an intimate relationship with the attendees that are going to show up. So you're immersed in it enough to know, like you said, who to give some extra love and care to and who is someone who is ready and able to buy. So I feel like this was a rich conversation. We went through everything that you possibly would need to be thinking about when you're thinking about your enrollment or your conversion event. What, the experiences, the community building, the engagement, how these things all play into you pitching your offer or you converting at your event. So thank you so much, Natisha. But before we hop off, what is one last gem that you'd like to share with the listeners? It could be business related, personal related, anything that you'd like to share to close out.
Yeah, for sure. I think I said it briefly, but remember, no matter what event you're hosting, whether it's virtual, whether it's in person, set up your experience with that one person in mind. So do it for the one.
Do it for the one, y'all. Do it for the one. I love it. I love it. I love it. That's a t-shirt right there.
Do it for the one.
Well, thank you so much for being here.
Thank
Exactly. Period.
you.
That's how you're going to maximize your conversion. That's how you're going to maximize it. Okay.
Get some products out there.
Yeah, yeah, I love it. So thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. And I hope you guys caught those gems. Now, let's fly.